Good evening. It's ToesDay. Yay! It's Jamie Allen Bishop here, and I am sitting here thinking about this month's theme. It's all about relationships around here. So in toes, relationships show up on our second to baby toe, the toe right next to the baby toe, which is, if you look on our hands, it's where we wear our rings. It's all about relationships on those toes. So those toes are the toes where that's where we can see if we have commitment issues, if we have anxiety around relationships, if we have concerns, if we are, the word that came up in the last couple of days, or the word that kind of has a big buzz going on in the world right now, is resilience. So that's where our resilience shows up. Resilience can show up in the action toes as well, as we kind of talked about last month. But I think that for the purposes of relationships, both relationships to higher self and relationships to our cohorts out in the world, all the humans that surround us, and furry friends and anything else that we have relationship with, that is all going to show up in our ring finger toes, is what we call them in the toe reading world. So in our ring finger toes, that's where our relationships show up. So let's take a look at some of the relationships that we have going on right now. So one of the ways that we can see, hey Simon, one of the ways that we can see how relationships show up in our toes has to do with how the toe comes off of the foot. So relationship toes are all about this ring finger toe right here, okay? So on the right foot, it's all about our external self. On the left foot, it's all about our internal self. That's really rarely the opposite, but in that like 0.01% of the population, it might be reversed. But you can see that in some of these examples here, we have relationship toes that kind of come off and then they kind of take that dive toward the floor. And then we also have relationship toes that kind of come straight off and maybe they curve a little bit toward the big toe. Or we have relationship toes that come off that, there was one that I saw that I want to show you because I think that it's a really beautiful example of toes that come straight off the toe, okay? So see how long and straight these toes are? They come straight off of the foot, and there's, when toes come straight off of the foot like that, we know that this is somebody who values their relationships. Really, it's a high importance to them. And really any toe that comes off super straight off of the foot is gonna be a toe that is really, really careful about how they treat whatever subject that toe holds sacred. So our big toe is our big picture or our destiny. Our pointer finger toe is about communication and creativity. Our middle toe is about our action or our temperament, how we show up in the world with our temper. Also has to do with how we take action in our lives. The relationship toe has to do with our relationships, both externally and our relationship with higher self. And just as a caveat to know a little bit about where I'm coming from, my perspective on the subject, when I talk about relationship to higher self, to me, that means to universal source energy, which is also what I refer to as God. Now, not everybody calls, everybody has a different name, perhaps, for the otherworldly or extraordinary energy that comes from without us, so outside of us. And I just want to touch base on that just really, really quick, because one of the things that happens when when we're talking about toe reading, right? Everybody associates it with maybe tarot reading or maybe palm reading or, you know, something like that. And while there's definitely similarities, because it takes into account the science of the body and where the science of the body meets the science of the mind, or the psychology of the mind, if you will. Okay, so I'm gonna back up even further. Way back, I'm gonna date myself by saying this, but that's okay, I don't mind. 1991, I was in school for a degree that may or may not still be a degree that can be obtained. And that degree was known as biopsychiatry. And what it was it's all about the brain and the brain chemistry. The intent for that degree is to go into the psychiatric field, okay? So to become maybe a psychiatrist, an MD. And that's what I intended at the time. So one of the things that we learned about was how the brain chemistry connects with how our bodies hold various and assorted things. So what we think about, we bring about. So if we are in a constant state of concern or panic over, let's just say, cancer, that has it's far more likely to manifest itself in our body because we're thinking about it. Now, does that mean that every time we think about cancer that we're gonna get it? No, it doesn't. But it means that we need to be hyper aware of how we're thinking about it. So perhaps, you know, they say that a positive thought is thousands of times more powerful than a negative thought. So the idea of positive affirmations that's been around for a good 50 years, if not longer, has been one of the catalysts to make the changes necessary to our thought patterns, to the way that we're raised, the way that we grow up believing, things that show up and over and prove themselves to us, you know, that kind of thing. One of the ways that we can deal with that is in adjusting what we call our own molecular biology through what we think about. And so what we think about adds to our own experience this sense of euphoria. And it doesn't matter if that thing is negative or positive. It's if we're thinking about it constantly, it trips the message center of our brain that sends us dopamine. Now, we could be thinking the most horrible, awful thoughts in the whole wide world, and it trips that dopamine center because we're constantly thinking about it. So that's why affirmations became so very popular and so very powerful when they first became, you know, when people first started talking about them, and how also they've sort of waned in their popularity because, you know, this stuff doesn't work. You know, that concept around, you know, you can think positive all day long, but it's still going to end up turning out blah, 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 blah. Well, that's because of the brain chemistry. So I'm kind of circling and circling and circling. So here's how it looks as far as the logical pattern of it. When we think a thought, whether it's positive or negative, whether it serves our highest purpose path or whether it you know, takes us down the rabbit hole of challenges, okay, our brain gives us a sort of a happy hit, if you will, a happy brain chemistry when we think something over and over and over. And what happens is we become addicted to that thought, literally, because our brain starts to need that brain chemistry to trip that. So if we worry a lot, we have a tendency to worry a lot because we're worrying about something that may or may not come true. It's not the worry, it's not the thing that we're worrying about, it's the fact that we're worrying that creates that brain chemistry. It disperses that dopamine, which ends up giving us a natural high, which ends up like causing us to worry more because we get addicted to that natural high, okay? And I know this doesn't make any sense, and it may have nothing to do to you about toe reading, but to me, it means everything in the whole wide world. Because when we show up and we think the same things over and over and over, that is where our belief systems lie. That's where that subconscious thinking happens within us. And that's where our bodies, literally, our DNA changes to showcase those thoughts and beliefs. And I can see it in the toes. There are lots of other amazingly talented people out there who have studied and have gotten really good at finding out those things through palmistry or, tarot cards, or just allowing, their innate ability, their innate intuition to come in. I have a girlfriend who does a lip reading, which is just so cool. And it's very, very similar in that what we're really doing is we're seeing in ourselves where this brain chemistry creates helpful things and not so helpful things, okay? So we once upon a time studied the pattern of behavior in the toes, and specifically in reflexology, which I think you guys all know that, or if you've watched me before, you know that reflexology is the basis for toe reading. So it's the idea that we have access to trigger points within our body that might bundle up into tight, challenging, nodules or knots, if you will. And by accessing that in the reflexology, we can loosen the energy there and allow that energy to flow a little bit more naturally and a little bit easier, okay? So for example, if we worry a lot, I'll go back to that worrying piece. Our toes will look a lot like this, actually. These are perfect examples of worry toes. So you can see how the toes really curve. They take a really strict curve toward the ground, okay? So on the inside, on her left foot, internally, she worries a lot more than she shows people on the outside. But on the outside, those worries end up looking like she might start to take action, but then she veers, then she hides, basically. Those action pieces will come about, but then they won't ever get finished because there's some fear around finishing things for her. Isn't that interesting? I love that kind of stuff because it's something that when we know where our beliefs lie and we know what's holding us back, that's the best way in the whole wide world to allow that thing to no longer control us, to no longer, it's the best way to release, right? And since yesterday was the full moon and today is a brand new month, we have this huge opportunity to release what is no longer serving us. So this topic around what we see in our toes are the things that maybe hold us back, specifically around holding us back. That's my specialty, is helping people release what's holding them back. That's why the tool is so amazing, because I can see it and it shows up, and it's all based on our brain chemistry. So that's kind of a circle back of what I am talking about when it comes to the brain chemistry and how it serves us or doesn't serve us anymore. So let's take a quick look at these feet. Okay, so I don't have them marked as right or left, but this is the right foot and this is the left foot, okay? And when I'm talking about external self, we're talking the right foot. And so this toe shows up. You can see that it comes to a very clear point, okay? So what that tells me, and these are male feet. So what that tells me is that this young man has a very specific idea of what relationship looks like in his world. And so that might be really helpful to know for him so that he doesn't choose somebody who doesn't see it his way. Because in relationship, we can get really caught up in what's going wrong with the relationship, right? And when I talk about resiliency, that's what I'm talking about not holding on to what looks like is going wrong, okay? Last week, I think it was last week. No, it wasn't on toe reading. It was just a little video that I added to my Instagram account. So last week on Instagram, I was talking about resilience. And resilience shows up in the feet as this kind of the kind of toe that I was talking about earlier, that toe that comes straight off the foot, that doesn't have any kind of curve to it, that where it just comes straight off, there's no curve to it. It's this, obviously a toe reader is going to see some details there that aren't obvious to somebody who's just learning the idea of toe reading. But on, let's see, this is the left foot. So internally, all is well. Externally, this relationship toe has a little bit of a hiding underneath the action toe. And the wealth and abundance toe is curved to the outside. So there's a couple of things going on with that. But what I definitely see is somebody who's super resilient. I also see somebody who's very non-committal. There's a little bit of a beating around the bush happening in these kind of toes. And that's shown by, let me show you. That's shown by, if you can see, there's the curve to the relationship toe is really pronounced, okay? So they might be able to see a really big, clear picture, but they also want to please everybody. And they're going to show up a little bit more inclined to beat around the bush, not go straight to the point. Not, so like that person and this person who, so this man who has this toe that comes to this very severe point right here, that is somebody who has a very pointed opinion around what relationship looks like. Whereas this person is, kind of like, well, it could be this, it could be that. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about any one subject, which has its benefits. And that would go really beautifully with another person who kind of had that same, flowy idea of what relationships look like, right? But to somebody who has a very specific pointed opinion, that where that padding comes to that point, that relationship would not work well with somebody who had a really super round tip to their foot. But the person who has the more rounded toe is the person who has more resilience, more ability to be resilient in her life. The thing that we would delve deeper into is how is she attracting events and experiences into her life that require her to be resilient, because we don't necessarily want to attract those kind of events, right? We want to stay calm, we want to stay even, we want things to kind of go with the flow and not really have too much up and down and up and down and up and down, right? So to have something be a little bit more even, a little bit more straight, a little bit more, I guess, predictable as far as humans go. Some people like that, some people don't. But if that's what this person was looking for, that's where we would delve deeper into that subject. So let's talk about these toes a little bit. When I look at these toes, one of the things that comes to mind is where there's really, really heavy holding back here, okay? So in this relationship toe, let me see, this, excuse me, that was the left toe. on that left relationship toe, there's a lot of hiding happening, right? Do you see how that relationship is completely hidden. And so, and this toe kind of hides it. You at least you can see the toenail on this one, but there's a lot of hiding happening here too. So externally and internally. So when I see toes like this, one of the things that we would delve deeper into is, where are you hiding in life, and what are you hiding, and why are you hiding it, right? I mean, those are some deep, profound, really intense questions that we could get at. And depending on what her goals were, we could really come to some very immediate ideas and concepts when it comes to that kind of stuff. Because when we recognize what those deep-seated beliefs and subconscious behaviors are, that's when we can release them. That's when the number one question that I get asked is, do toes change? Yes, toes change. And so with her toes that are, kind of crinkled up and really hiding dramatically, right? We really very easily, very quickly can bring those toes out from hiding and straighten them out and have a lot more, I guess, not to be repetitive, but to go back to what I was saying before, to have things be a little bit more even, a little bit more reliable, a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot for this person, because their toes are so clenched up. And so, I kind of think of like, that that feeling that we get when we see toes that are that, like somebody's really, really pulling hard on that horse to stop. So where is action not happening? Where is relationship not happening? Where, if the relationship is happening, are they creating a stop around it? How do they get over the hill so that they can feel a little bit more faith and trust and a little bit more prosperity and abundance? That kind of thing. So anyway, that's super, super exciting and super cool when it comes to toe reading. Let's see here. All right, well, I think that we'll talk about one more thing when it comes to action. No, when it comes to relationship and how that looks like. Okay, so you know how in between the toes, this little like webbing piece right here, okay? Now, I don't know if you know this, but one of the best ways to access the meridians that the toes house, and let's just talk really quick about what that means. In the hologram of the body where it shows up on the feet, it looks very much like this, okay? So if this were the feet from the bottom, okay? So in other words, I would be, this would be my heel, these would be my toes, this is the bottom of my foot, this is the top of my foot, okay? So if the bottoms of my feet are toward the camera and the hologram of the body is within the bottoms of the feet, that's what this diagram is all about, okay? So anything that we hold within will point toward that big toe. So it will come into the big toe. It will bend, it will curve, it will, get thicker. It will show itself more on that internal self side of the meridian. Whereas if it's future, if it's things that are future oriented, it will be outside of us. I think of the future as out there, right? It's out there, somewhere out there is the future. So anything that points toward the baby toes or has more of a thicker padding or even if the toenail itself turns and curves toward the outside. So let me just show you on those same feet that I was showing you earlier. So the relationship doesn't necessarily curve toward the future, but boy, does that faith and trust toe curve toward the future, right? So even though So what's interesting about that kind of toe is it curves itself toward that big toe, right? You can see how the toe itself curves toward the big toe, but the nail then points toward the future. Do you see how that's working on that toe? Where it's pointed to the big toe, so it's pointed to the past, but it's all future oriented. Okay? So I talk about that just to explain that if that's what your relationship toe is showing up like. Now, obviously that wasn't the relationship toe, that was the faith and trust toe on that particular person. But if that's how your relationship toe is showing up, one of the things that you can do is start to journal or start to acknowledge where are your thoughts around what's happened in the past affects what will happen in the future. Okay? So come to some sort of understanding about what's holding you back from really allowing yourself to be fully invested in all the relationships in your life. So those kind of thoughts and beliefs will affect family. They'll affect friends. They'll definitely affect loved ones, love partners. I never know what to say when it comes to that because I feel like you can't say spouse because that's not accurate. Anyway, you get my drift, right? You get the understanding that I'm trying to make, which means that when we're focused on the past with our thoughts, but our words are all about the future or our vision is all about the future, it means that there's a disconnect between the two around what we need right here, right now. So we're kind of like, I think of the little kid, la, 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 la. Like, I don't want to hear it. I'm just going to ignore it and it'll go away, right? Unfortunately, that's not how body chemistry works. We need to take the time to acknowledge the pain in order to envision the future as present tense. Does that make sense? So to envision the future as present tense is one of the most challenging things to experience as a human, because we like to dream about the future. We like to worry about the past, but we can't bring our dreams to us without kind of doing away with both. We have to do away with the past, we have to do away with the future, and we have to really focus on the here and now. So, for example, let's say I wanted to live in a castle. I don't know. Okay. So if I want to live in a castle, but I don't live in a castle yet, I just live in a tiny little apartment. Okay. Maybe I want to live in, that's my alarm telling me to wrap it up. So I'll wrap it up. So I want to live in a castle. I might want to live in a foreign country in this castle. And right now I'm stuck right here in this small space, and maybe I have a limited income. Maybe things aren't working to envision myself actually living the dream that I have in my head somewhere about the future of living in a castle in a foreign country. Okay, so are we wrapping our head around that concept? So what I would start to do is I would start to write a story as if it's happening right now. So as I open my eyes in the morning, I see a stone wall. And as I'm looking at the stone wall, I smell the beautiful fragrance from the gardens below of the lilac and lavender. I don't know, I'm making it up as I go along. And when I pull on my robe and put on my slippers and I'm walking down the hall, I feel the stones of the floor beneath my feet. Do you see how it gives me goosebumps to say these words, because bringing that future idea into the present is what makes it feel real. And guess what? In all the world, that is the easiest way to make something happen for you that much faster. Okay? So my husband does this all the time with parking spaces. He's amazing at it, right? He pulls into the, he doesn't even need to pull into the parking lot before he's already saying, who's pulling out of my parking spot? Where's my parking spot? And he envisions that parking spot right at the front every single time, and without fail, somebody pulls out just as he's pulling up. It's magical, really. And that's exactly the same kind of thing that we need to do when we want something. So if we want the love of our lives to show up in our life, if we want the relationship that we're currently in to look a little bit cleaner, a little bit brighter, a little bit nicer, that's where we have to go with it. We have to envision that dream happening right now. So journal. I know that a lot of people resist the idea of journaling, but if you just start to write what's going on in your head and you don't worry about the words that are coming out so much as you're communicating what's in your head as if you're there, as if it's happening right now, oh, the power that you have as a person writing your own story is truly, truly phenomenal. And you can bring that person to you. You can adjust the relationship that you're in to be exactly what you want it to be. It can show up for you. It just takes a little bit of extra effort, time, love, energy, and bringing everything to that present tense moment where we can envision that this is how it is for us. And magic happens when we do that. So, and if you want to see it in your toes, what you're looking for is a toe that comes straight off, that shows up bright and happy, that doesn't have any wrinkles, that doesn't have any creases, and everything that you see that is not that is all of our wonderful, amazing experience and wisdom that's showing us what we don't want. And so when we focus on what we do want, it's amazing what happens. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jamie Allen Bishop, Master Toe Reader with Soul Heart Entertainment. If you enjoyed this toe reading, please send me questions for next week's Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for ToesDay. And if you are interested in a private reading, and what couples reading is really exciting and popular, it's the #1 gift. Is a 2-for-1 kind of thing. It's a couples reading called the Royal Reading. If you want to gift that for Christmas, it's a fantastic Christmas gift, and it can also make a really wonderful thing to actually do in person for Valentine's Day. So we gift it at Christmas, we experience it on Valentine's Day. 2-for-1. Anyway, hope you have a great evening. Jamie Allen Bishop with Soul Heart Entertainment here. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.